Hey guys, and welcome to another one of my tutorials. In this video, I'll be showing you how to use breakpoints. So if you don't know what breakpoints are, they're basically a tool that lets you, or it helps you debug your code at runtime to figure out what's going wrong or what's happening. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've had a lot of people message me for help on their tutorials, and then when I go to help them out, I realize that they don't even know what a breakpoint is or how to use one. And since they're so essential to debugging, I mean, I use them every day, I figured I'd just go ahead and make a little tutorial on how to use them, or at least how I use them. So it's going to be a pretty quick one this time, but I just wanted to have a video that I could kind of point people to whenever they ran into trouble. So what I have here is a little demo setup, and it's going to help me demonstrate my point. So you can see I have a light up here, and when I walk into this green box, it's going to turn on the light. And then if I walk into the red box, it's going to turn off the light. And I can just do that over and over. So this is it working. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this part out, but I'm going to go and kind of break the code and make some common mistakes that I see people make. And then I'm going to go through and show you guys step by step how to debug what's wrong and how to fix it. And you'd be able to do this even if you didn't have any prior knowledge of how the code worked. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and break it real quick, and then I'll be right back. All right, so I've gone ahead and broken the code, and you can see now if I go ahead and walk into this green box, the light no longer turns on. So essentially what I'm going to be doing is showing you guys how I would go about debugging something like this using breakpoints. And obviously I know what the problem is because I just created all the problems, but I'm going to try to approach it from the point of view of I don't know what's going on, I have no idea what this code does or how it works, but I want to be able to figure out what the problem is and where it lies. And all that I know is that when I walk inside of this green box, I want this light to turn on. So let's take a look at this green box. So if we click on it and open up its blueprints, you see it brings us to the event graph. And inside of here, we have some code. And it's getting ran from the on component begin overlap, and then it's ending with turning on the lamp. So that seems reasonable, right? We overlap with the box and then we turn on the lamp. But for some reason, it's not working. And we could meticulously kind of look at the code and try to figure out why it's not working and make our best guess. Or we can just add a breakpoint and see exactly what's going on. So to add a breakpoint, you can either click on a node and then right click and say add breakpoint, or you can just click on the node and press F9 and it will toggle a breakpoint. So if I press it again, it will turn it off. And I'm going to be using F9 because it's a lot quicker. It's just kind of like a hotkey. So now that we have the breakpoint here, if we go ahead and run it, and we go ahead and we walk over this green box again, you can see, well, our breakpoint is still not getting hit. So that tells me one thing. It tells me that this function is never getting called, which means, of course, the light is never turning on because that means this is never getting called. So for some reason, our begin overlap is never getting hit. And this is also something that's really nice about breakpoints is they can just tell you right away if some of your code is not being hit, as opposed to adding a print string and hooking this up and then hooking this up and seeing if the string prints. You can just add a breakpoint instead, and if the breakpoint doesn't get hit, then you know the code's not getting hit. So that narrows it down to something to do with collision. So if we look at our box and we come over here to the collision section, you can see, oh, here's our problem. Our collision preset is set to no collision. So let's go ahead and set this back to overlap all dynamic. And we'll try it again with our breakpoint still here. So we press play, go over to our green box. And you can see as soon as I overlap with it, something happens. You can see the screen kind of freezes. And this is what happens when you hit a breakpoint. So if we go back to our code and make sure when you're looking at your breakpoints, you want to make sure the game is still running in the background. So you can see I still have the game running. I didn't press escape or close or stop. The game's still running. It's just paused on this node. And so what we want to do here is we kind of want to step through the code and see where it's going wrong. And to do that, we can either use this button up here called step over, or we can press, as it says, F10, which is a hotkey. So I'm going to press F10, and that will bring me to the next node. So you can see this little this little arrow move from here to here. And it's basically saying, okay, now we're on this node. And you can see the execution is also showing that it just went from this node to this node. And when you're inside of this mode, you can do a couple things. You can hover over variables, which is really helpful. So we can look at this other actor, which is the actor we're overlapping with. And you can see it's set to our first person characters. You can say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. The box overlapped with something, and the thing we overlapped with is the first person character. But more importantly, we want to see why it's not getting to this turn on. So if we press F10 again, you can see it actually brought us back to here. And that's because, or that's telling us that this cast is not succeeding, because this execution pin only gets executed if the cast succeeds. So we can take a look at this cast and say, okay, wait a minute, this is casting it to a first-person game mode. So of course it's not succeeding. It should be casting it to our first-person character. So then we can press stop, and we can delete this, and we can say cast to first-person character, and hook this up, and then we'll try it again. And it's kind of this repetitive sequence of, seeing where the code fails, fixing it, running it again. And so now if we walk into it and we go back to our code, we press F10. So now when we press F10, we would expect it to go to this node because we would think that this would succeed, and it does. So now we're on the turn on function. So we can press F11, and F11 will actually go inside of a function. So F10 steps over, F11 steps into. Those are two really important keys to memorize. There's also buttons for them up here. So you have step over, which is F10, and step into, which is F11. But we want to step into this function because we want to go into the turn on function and see exactly what's going wrong. So if we press F11, like I just said, so we're now inside of the turn on function. So you can see it actually opened up the BP lamp, and we're inside of the BP lamp turn on function. And we can go back to using the same keys that we were before. So you can press F10 again to go to the next node. And you can see the first thing it's doing is it's saying, hey, is the point light already on? And if it is, then we're going to set the visibility to true. And right away, you should say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense, because if you're turning on a light, shouldn't you be turning it on if it's not already on? And sure enough, if you press F10, it's going to bring you back to here. And that tells you right away that this branch failed. It went to false because the point light was already visible. And we can actually look at that if we come back and do this again. Press F11. If you hover over the point light is visible, this little red node here, you can see the current value is set to false in the little pop-up down there. So it's saying the light is not currently on, which is true. The light is not currently on, but we only want to turn it on if this is false. So we can stop and we can say, okay, this should be false, right? If the light is not currently on, then we want to set it to visible and play the sound. So let's go ahead and run this again and walk into our little green box. And again, we're on our breakpoint, so we'll see if we can get further this time. So we press F10, F10, F11, F10. So now it should succeed because this should be false, which it is. And then we're calling point light set visibility to true, and then we're playing the sound, and then we're done. So once you're done, or once you want it to just continue running, you can press resume up here at the top. So I'm just going to press resume. And it's going to keep hitting this breakpoint, but we're just going to remove it for now because we're kind of done. We think it's supposed to work, so I pressed F9 to remove it. And you can see just like that, the light turned on. So now the turning on is working. So let's test the turn off. Oh, imagine that, it doesn't work. So let's press escape and kind of do the same thing for the turn off. And you can see right away I actually get some errors here. And I'm going to ignore these for now just to show you how I would debug without the errors. But the errors are kind of telling you what the problem is as well. So if we go to the turn off, it's very similar. So let's put a breakpoint here inside of the begin overlap. And let's first of all turn on the light, and then we'll turn it off. So turn on the light, turn it off, and just as we would expect, we are hitting our breakpoint inside of the turn off. And it casts to a first person character, and then this time it calls turn off. So again, I'm going to press F11 now to go inside. So F11. And why did that not go inside? Oh, right, because it's broken. So actually, if we go back to this turn off, I pressed F11 and actually confused me for a second because it didn't go into this turn off. And the reason it's not going into the turn off is because if we hover over lamp, you can see the current value is set to none. So our lamp isn't set to anything, so it's trying to call turn off on something it doesn't even know about. So that's our problem. And that's actually what this is telling us about. If we press escape, you can see error, accessing none, trying to read property lamp. And I see people get this error all the time when they're asking me questions, and that means that your variable is not set. And you can go and just click on this message, and it will bring you right to the spot where it's not being set. So lamp is never being set. And we can see over here we have lamp and it's set to instance editable. So all we need to do is just click on our little guy here. And as you can see, the lamp is not set to anything. So let's set it to our lamp and then go ahead and press play, and we'll try it again. Come over here, turn on, and it did not turn off, but it did play the sound. So you can see it's playing the sound, but it's not actually turning off. So there still must be one thing wrong. So let's put our breakpoint back, and back here, hit it, press F10, F10, F11. Now we actually can go inside of our turn off event, and we're checking in here. So let's make sure this makes sense. So we're saying, we're trying to turn off the light. We're saying, hey, is it visible? And if it is, then we want to set the visibility to false. But as you can see here, it's setting the visibility to true. So if we press F10, see, setting visibility to true instead of false, which is obviously not right, and it's playing the sound. So we can stop, and we can say, okay, wait a minute, this should be false because we're trying to turn off the light. And then I think that's the last thing, so I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this breakpoint and run it again. And if we come back here, we should be able to do everything now. So we can turn on the light, and we can turn off the light. So there you go. That's how you use breakpoints. Just to recap, the really important hotkeys are F9 to toggle a breakpoint, F10 to step to the next node, and F11 to step into a node. And you can only step into nodes that are functions. For example, you can't step into a node like this because it's an event, or you can't step into this because it's a cast. You can only step into nodes that are functions. And if you try to, I'll just show you real quick. If you try to press F11 on this event graph, I think it will probably just, yeah, it just steps over it as if you pressed F10 because it's like, hey, you can't step into this. But yeah, you can step into that one. So yeah, this is a super useful way. You can totally figure out exactly what's going on with your code without having to, add thousands and thousands of print strings, which is what I see a lot of people do. But anyways, if you found this tutorial helpful and you liked the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Thanks.